Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Infinite Screen. You are now joining the second part of our collaborative top 10 of Greek mythology. So, if you haven't watched the first part or listened to the first part, I would strongly recommend you go back and listen to that so you know what we're talking about. But just a quick recap, we've explored lots of different routes through Greek mythology, from the mystical to the bizarre to the psychological. We've examined both nostalgia and the contemporary, and we have a top six so far that goes counting from six up to number one. At number six, we have Clash of the Titans. At number five, we have Jim Henson's Storyteller, Greek Myths. At number four, we have Disney's Hercules. And at joint second, we have the fierce anti-war polemic, The Trojan Women from 1971. And we have Pasolini's psychologically intriguing and visually arresting Oedipus Rex. At number one at the moment, we have probably the best known Greek myth movie, which is Jason and the Argonauts. But what we're going to do now, we have two more choices each. We're going to hear Phil's next choice, then mine. Then we're going to do a little bit of the backlist, the things that didn't quite make it, and there's going to be some interesting examination there. And then we'll hear our last two choices and finalize our top 10. So, Phil, what is your next choice?
Well, this film kind of came out of nowhere for me. I only discovered it in prep for this episode, and yes, how that sits compared to my other choices. I feel like a lot of my choices, perhaps a lot of my interest in this kind of subgenre of cinema is from the visual perspective. Like I really appreciate crazy aesthetic interpretations of these ideas. So obviously Jason the Argonauts because of Ray Harryhausen, essentially. Hercules because of Gerald Scarfe, essentially. Oedipo Rey because of the bonkers visual language that Pasolini creates. This was a film that had me weeping on multiple occasions and just really kind of brought back the emotionality of these stories. You know, the whole point of a Greek tragedy, according to the classic definition, is that it's supposed to inspire pity and horror and to create that kind of cathartic response in the audience. And for me, this film achieved that in spades. It's an incredible movie. Some of these other ones I've mentioned, yeah, are acquired taste. This film, I feel I would wholeheartedly recommend to any living, breathing human being. It is Antigone by the French Canadian director Sophie de Raspe. It was released in 2019. And Antigone in the kind of the Greek tradition is the daughter of Oedipus. That doesn't matter here. They've basically taken the central story of Antigone, adapted it to the story of Tunisian refugees in French Canada. And Antigone is a promising student approaching her 18th birthday. She's got a kind of tentative romance blooming with this local white Canadian kid whose dad is an important politician. Her brothers, she's got two brothers, one of which is like a total rude boy, wide boy, like gangster type. The other is much more clean cut and successful. And in a tragic turn of events, her older successful brother is killed and her younger brother is arrested. And this basically tears apart her whole life. And she what how this kind of why this is so clever, I think, in terms of adapting the Antigone story. So the Sophocles play is that in that play, both her brothers are killed, and one is on the right side of the civil war, and one is on the wrong side. And so one of them is afforded full burial rights, and the other one isn't. And that is what kind of is then the provoking incident for her. She is desperate to they're her family, and she doesn't see a difference in terms of affording them the basic human dignity of full burial rights and grieving for them. In this case, yeah, it's her brother, And the fact that he is going to be deported, basically, the younger brother, because of this, just spirals her into this. It's her family. Of course, she has to try and help him. That's her true kind of basic primal instinct. And it doesn't matter that he's a gangster. It doesn't matter that he's a waste of space. They love each other, and therefore she has to do whatever she can to help. It is, yeah, I don't know how to kind of summarize the rest of the story really, other than an incredible performance by Naima Ricci as an Antigone. Another thing this film does quite cleverly is it uses social media, which feels like it could be an awful kind of choice, but actually uses it in a very restrained fashion. It has these little sequences, and I think the idea is basically that social media is the chorus. Of course, the chorus is a classic component of a Greek play. It's a body of people who act as the bridge, really, between the audience and the main characters of the play. And yeah, so the social media is the chorus here. It's beautifully shot, but the visuals are not what defines this film. It is the emotional core, it is the cleverness of the adaptation, but with just a profound empathic effect that it had on me, at least.
What's the reason, or what's the link between the source material and the mythology and the modern story?
So this is actually the film that I took that comment from, the comment stream that I will should perhaps just repeat now. So yes, last episode I put this comment to Matthew. I found it on the comment thread for this film. A problem with Antigone is that it's commonly twisted to suit miscellaneous political views the director happens to agree with in order to fabricate apparent support for them, regardless of the original plot and conflict, as is the case here. Write your own stories, don't try to steal authority from the classics. So, although that's a slightly kind of obtuse, annoyingly closed-minded way of looking at things, I guess that is essentially resonating with your question there of why does this have to be an adaptation of Antigone? I'm not sure I know. Like, I feel like perhaps it was a play that the director liked. I mean, it's certainly like again another classic kind of feminist or proto-feminist story, like the way that it gives voice and dignity and tragedy to such a strong female character. That maybe it was kind of just an organic process from Derasp reaching that lens or that angle in on the story. I mean, all I know really is that I thought it was phenomenal, and I think perhaps the result justifies the choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And in lots of respects, these stories are inspiration and they contain some kernel of examining some aspect of people's relationships with each other or people's relationships with the civilizations they live in that do take you on these flights of fancy. But I guess you hope that at the heart there's some psychological nugget which is intact from one to the other, not necessarily the
Yeah,
narrative framing, because the narratives themselves, as you say, were
sure.
flexible
Okay, yeah.
anyway, but there's
Well,
some nugget in there that is
yes. Well,
remains intact.
in this case, the fact is that so her family refugees, they are the closeness of that family unit is everything. She's lost her mum and dad, well, they've lost their parents. It's the grandmother and four kids, two girls, two boys. And yeah, that family unit is everything. And when that comes into conflict with a legislation, ideas of judicial ideas of a different culture, basically, that is being imposed on them and told them this has to happen this way, when it feels contrary to everything
Mm.
that is real to them and everything that has sustained them, and especially, Antigone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, that
Yeah,
I
and this
think
is a
that,
narrative that has been visible at some point in pretty much every culture out there, because every culture has always agonized about the relationship between people who are seen as native, people who are not being seen as native, the experience of people who are strangers in a new land. And the Greeks were always super alert to this because, whilst in some respects it was quite a small world with quite a low population, in very close proximity, you had very, very different cultures and different groups of people. And we're talking about the Greeks, but the Greeks obviously didn't think about themselves as Greeks. They thought about themselves as Athenians or Spartans or Thebans. And all of those themes underpin any historical attempt to recreate these stories is rooted in that sense of who are these people and to what extent are they insiders, outsiders, strangers? And I think that is one of the really compelling elements that translates through to the modern world, because we are in a world where there is so much agony around the immigrant experience, how that applies to the people who experience it, how that affects politics, obviously very vivid in Western politics right now, where people's anxieties and stresses about immigration overwhelm almost any other contemplation of what's required. And I think, therefore, these narratives about the nature of being or feeling separate or being ostracized and the effect that has within and outside the group, I think these are fascinating stories that feel like they become more and more relevant over time. And I feel like the Greeks had a really good handle on it because of the nature of their world. For Romans, the world was a place to subjugate. They weren't really interested in the clashes between different cultures, and they had a different way of thinking about national identity in any case. But I think the Greeks is more similar to ours in this, as in so many other things.
And of course, the kind of concept of Greece didn't really exist. They were, united at certain points in opposition to Xerxes, for example. But those were independent city-states with a certain kind of shared underpinning of culture, but vast cultural differences as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And deep feuds and rulers who had generally had some kind of legacy of having come from somewhere else. And this is definitely key to the Theban story, which obviously lots of these plays come from the Theban story. And that is
being the Oedipus sequence for those of you who might not be up with it.
So being usurpers, being rulers who've come from a foreign land, all of this kind of stuff is in all of those stories. But the Greeks obviously very obsessed with ideas of strangers and how you should treat them. And you have that deep fear of the outsider, and at the same time that kind of desire to be a host and to respect your guests. But anyway, this sounds like a great film. Sorry, Phil, I've gone off.
Yeah, please watch it, Matthew. Please watch it,
listeners.
I think it's great.
Amazing. Okay, should we try and rank it, or should we put another?
Let's have one more.
Yeah, okay. All right. Brilliant. Okay, so I am also going to share something that I've discovered during the process of researching this. Well, rather, I'd been aware of it, but I totally failed to notice that it was, in fact, anything to do with Greek mythology. But in fact, it's a very, very faithful retelling, both in content and in feel, of a Greek story. And actually, we're going back to the Oedipus story again. We're going to the end of the Oedipus story. And there's a famous play, Oedipus at Colonus, which is around the very end of Oedipus's life. And again, it does that very Greek thing of zeroing in on a very important psychological moment. And it's really whether Oedipus at the end of his life. And in the story Oedipus at Colonus, Oedipus meets Theseus and goes through purification rites and reflects on what he's done and is able to find some kind of peace, which is very interesting. That's not something you hear in every retelling of the Oedipus story, but it has a feeling of resolution, purification, redemption at the end of the story. And the adaptation that I'm going to show you is called The Gospel at Colonus. And it's a theatrical staging, though there's a really good TV recording of it that you can find on YouTube under 1985's PBS Great Performances. But the actual show is from 1983. It was originally put on in Brooklyn. And it is a gospel retelling of Sophocles' Oedipus at Colonus. So the story is told again by a narrator. This narrator, unimprovably, this role is played by Morgan Freeman, who you get to see telling the story and also singing at different points. The different roles are played by amazing gospel singers. So it totally recreates that sense of the Greek chorus as the narrators, the commenters, the responders. But they are a full-on gospel choir, and they are extraordinarily good at what they do. Some of the casting is extraordinary. So Oedipus is actually played not by one, but by 6 people. He is played by Clarence Fountain and the 5 Blind Boys of Alabama. If you're not into your gospel music, the Blind Boys of Alabama are one of the greatest gospel close harmony groups that there were. They were some of the absolute kind of leaders in gospel music, repeatedly approached by pop musicians to come into the pop mainstream and refused to do so because they're only interested in gospel music. And more and more and more, loads of amazing gospel singers cast in this story. What you see in Gospel at Colonus is basically the whole story of Oedipus's final days reinvented as a Black Pentecostal gospel service. So it's this ecstatic story of yearning for redemption, trying to find redemption. And tonally, it just could not fit better with that feeling of a gospel service, that yearning for redemption, knowing that you're a sinner, knowing that you've done things that people might think are unforgivable, but having faith that God or Jesus is going to bring you into the light. And tonally, it fits unbelievably well and is incredibly rich and uplifting. And musically, it is absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to show you a scene from it in a moment, which I think you will really enjoy. The reason I love it is I think we've talked about what you can and can't reinvent. And in a sense, sometimes sticking to that historical context, I think, is the thing that holds you back when you're looking at these stories, rather than going, there's an inherent mystery playing out here and there's a symbolism playing out here, and I can take that and put that in another place and it'll grow and it'll thrive and it'll spill over. Spotting this parallel between the Oedipus redemption story and the flavor of Pentecostal Christianity, I think works unbelievably well and just gives the story just incredible richness.
Fair Colonus, fair Colonus, it was ordained I shall never leave this resting place. Daughter, lead me on. Lead me on, he says. Lead me on. Do not go on. This place is holy. Stop when I go. Well, you cannot walk this ground, no, no, no. Stop when I go. Daughters of somebody help me tell him, stop when I go. First you must kneel down and pray, well, stop well, till I got him, yes, well, stop. Please don't you go on, do not go on.
watch this. I put it on planning to watch about 3 minutes of it, and then I was like about 50 minutes in before I found this, so I could pause it. Yeah. Spectacular, right?
What an amazing thing. Yeah, I need to watch all of it as soon as possible. So that guy, the guy with the guitar, is he the chorus leader or is
Yeah, he's
he?
the chorus leader. So
Yeah.
obviously I think at that point they're protecting the sacred site that he's trying to get to. I can't remember exactly how the story works, but yeah, they're playing the role of the chorus saying, "No, Oedipus, you can't come this way because you've sinned."
Yeah,
So you
yeah, yeah.
have
Nice, nice.
Clarence at the front, who I think he makes such a great Oedipus. He's got that kind of strength, shaky strength. He's lived a lot. There's a lot
Oh yeah,
behind him,
definitely.
but he also has all those voices behind him who are like the voices that are
Yeah.
part of him. I think it's absolutely spectacular, just
Yeah.
extraordinary. Yeah, piece of
Yeah, well,
imagination.
brilliant conceit, brilliant kind of yeah, sonic design. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I need to watch it as soon as
Yeah, it's
possible,
great.
Matthew.
I am, of course, slipping past you the fact that I'm cheating in that it's not really designed for the screen. Like this is a filming of what was a very critically well received musical at the time, but it's got Morgan
Yeah.
Freeman in it, and you can see it on YouTube. So that's my wrangle.
But yeah, no, I think that's a great choice, and I love the kind of the multiplicity of media that we are kind of calling to. Obviously, any top 10 that we create is going to be hugely, hugely subjective. So I think yes, I certainly accept your choice.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, that's my fourth choice. We've both put in two things we feel particularly passionate about as
Mm.
our fourth choices. So yeah, I guess firstly, Antigone. It feels like something that's one of the strongest and hardest recommends I've heard you give, Phil. So where does that nestle it in our upper echelons? Bearing in mind, I'm leaning on you for wise counsel here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably put it number one.
But at number one,
Compared to, I just feel like in terms of the kind of just the immediacy of it, the relevance of it, the breathing, real emotional contemporary life into such an ancient story.
I trust your instincts, Phil. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. You obviously have only had a little flavour of the gospel at Colonists. It's inherently quite an unrankable thing because it's a whole experience and a whole vibe, feeling more than it's anything else. I would say
Yeah.
a feeling, but it's a feeling of redemption.
From what I heard there, the music sounded
Oh,
fantastic.
it's absolutely impeccable. The music is extraordinary. So, okay, we're definitely nestling it in the top half somewhere. Who currently at third equal, we have the Trojan Women, and we have Pasolini's Oedipus Ray. Am I saying that
Yeah,
right?
I think
Yeah.
Oedipus Ray, I think, or just
Yeah.
got it, Oedipus is fine.
So, should we go above or below those? It's definitely going to make you feel better than either of those two things.
What's your
I
gut
think we can
telling you?
tuck it below those two. I think that's fair.
Okay.
So that would put it fifth in our current ranking. So I would love you to reflect now, Phil, of the things that we haven't talked about that are not going to ultimately make the top 10 that you think are interesting near misses or interesting side quests for our
Yes.
viewers and
Well,
listeners.
my first almost ran. I was really upset about not being able to find a space for it, really. It's a version of Medea. It's a TV adaptation by Lars von Trier
Oh, I have
for
heard of this.
think it was for Danish TV, and it's so good. It's absolutely brilliant. So it's using a script by Carl Theodor Dreyer, who was a titan of silent cinema. So it was a script that he wrote and never, I mean, he started certainly in silent film. Maybe he kind of then moved into talkies, but he never got a chance to film it. And Lars von Trier, who fantastically famous filmmaker in his own right. I guess this was towards the start of his career. Took it, made this film. The setting is brilliant. It's set in the kind of the fenlands. Again, it's not Greece. It's like boggy, marshy, kind of long houses built over marshland, and it has that sense of a primeval cult. Similar to perhaps what Pasolini does, but in a very kind of North European way. It creates that sense of a primal, more ancient culture that perhaps underpins the later, more refined versions of these myths. Great performances. Yeah, it's magical. And that, when I first found out about this and tried to find it, it was incredibly hard to find. I think I got an imported DVD of it, but I am now pleased to say that it is available on YouTube. So that also comes highly recommended. Very quickly, a couple of others. I wasn't sure whether you were going to pick Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which obviously we've been celebrating the Coen brothers a little bit recently. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is put forward as a version of the Odyssey. I don't think it really is, but it is a great film though, nonetheless. Another almost ran, is Black Orpheus. Have you ever seen this film?
I have not seen it. It came up repeatedly in my viewing. I thought there was a chance that you would pick it, but I
Yes, it is
haven't seen it.
great. It's really good. It sounds like a dubious blaxploitation film. It's not. It's a version of Orpheus set in the carnival in Rio de Janeiro, basically, which obviously works perfectly with Orpheus as the great musician. And yeah, it's another great film, highly recommended. But yeah, I'll leave my almost rans there. How about you?
Something else that I think is in the nostalgia slash for kids vibe. Obviously, one of the things which has really revived Greek mythology for another subsequent generation has been Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which is a whole franchise which takes diabolical liberties with Greek mythology and transplants them to modern America. But it is pretty good. Kids love it. There are two screen adaptations of this, one of which does everything wrong that you can do with adapting Greek mythology, I think, which is the movie version. The TV version is actually very good and very interesting and does some interesting things with the ideas of the gods and goddesses who walk amongst us and try and imagine what they'd look like in a contemporary setting. So, as a continuation of that tradition of reinventing for kids, I actually think Percy Jackson is pretty benign. I think the writing is generally really good, very imaginative. And yes, the latest screen version is pretty good. And one final addition, which is way beyond cheating, which is, I guess, the story that I would really like to see adapted for the screen, which is The King Must Die by Mary Renault, which is her version of the Theseus story. I think if you were looking now to make a brilliant TV miniseries or potentially a movie that brought the Greek mythology to life in a way that could combine history and mystery and symbolism, I think The King Must Die is it. I absolutely love these books as a kid. I am slightly flummoxed as to why no one has taken this incredible IP and turned it into an entertainment franchise. But what I love about it is it gets under the skin of the fact that Greek mythology is layers rather than a canon. And it shows the kind of the later civilized Greek states and how they were laying over a more ancient, kind of more female driven earth culture, and how ancient Greece was a clash between these two worlds. So super interesting, but hasn't really hit the infinite screen apart from as a audio book. So that's cheating.
A last one for the almost rans section, Matthew.
Yeah.
Just want to give a quick shout out to Chirac, directed by Spike Lee, which is another one that I've only seen recently, but I think it was an Amazon original, Amazon Prime. It had a limited theatrical release. But yeah, directed by Spike Lee, and it's a version of Lysistrata, set in gangland Chicago, basically. And it's got an amazing cast of brilliant kind of Spike Lee regular collaborators, but it's got Angela Bassett in it, it's got Wesley Snipes in it, it's got Samuel L. Jackson in it. And yes, Lysistrata is the story of basically the women on two sides of a conflict are so fed up with their men dying and putting everybody in needless danger that they go on strike from sleeping with their husbands and partners, is the premise for it. And yeah, very interesting adaptation. I think it works really well. Maybe not quite top five for me, but definitely a close sixth or seventh.
So I'm fascinated to see what is still awaiting us. Phil, would you mind sharing with us your final choice under the infinite screen Greek mythology top 10?
I would be honored. So for my final choice, I'm going to a classic film by one of my favorite artists. Yeah, full stop. fans of this show might come to realize that I'm a big fan of multidisciplinary artists, writers, creators. I think I've spoken before, mentioned Jodorowsky before, and things like that. Well, this time, Jean Cocteau is one of my absolute heroes. He was a poet, he was a playwright, I think he was sometime journalist. He made, I think he only made like 4 or 5 films in his career, and they're all like 10 years apart. But I think he's an incredible artist, incredible filmmaker. So he was making films in like the 40s, 50s. I think his last film is 1960. He loves the really lo-fi special effects. He loves jump cuts. He loves backwards photography. He loves really kind of imaginative use of sets to trompe l'oeil effects.
What was that
And
word again, Phil? What was that word?
trompe l'oeil, it means,
as in trick the
yeah,
eye.
like
Trick the eye.
indeed,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
It's like an optical illusions, basically, so that something can surprise you with the set. It's the story of Orpheus, yet again, but Orpheus kind of transposed to post-war France. The music, interestingly, is stripped out of this version of Orpheus. He's a poet rather than a musician, and he hangs out in the kind of trendy salons and bars, and he's kind of lost his mojo a little bit. He's everyone kind of worships him. He has this, incredible reputation, but he is feeling lacking in inspiration. He doesn't seem to be particularly invested in his new-ish marriage to Eurydice. And yes, that's the starting point. It reimagines the agents of death as these motorcycle drivers, and has a couple of very kind of ominous scenes where you hear their engines approaching, and then you see them disappearing into the distance, and then the dead body is there. The death character is played by, let me see, Maria Casares, and she is, yes, she has an incredible elegance to her. And basically, in this version, Orpheus, played by Cocteau's longtime collaborator Jean Marais and sometime lover Jean Marais, is kind of almost becomes besotted with death. And I guess it's playing off of that theme of like so many kind of poets and musicians and artists having that, yes, kind of ambiguous relationship with death and finitude and the end of things.
Regardez-moi dans les yeux. Désirez-vous rejoindre Eurydice ou la mort? Mais je vous pose une question précise, ne l'oubliez pas. Est-ce la mort que vous désirez rejoindre ou Eurydice? Les deux. Et si possible, tromper l'une avec l'autre. Dépêchons-nous. Je me félicite de ne plus être dans la vie. On a oublié des gants chez vous. Des gants? Mettez-les. Allez, allez, mettez-les. Avec ces gants, vous traverserez les miroirs comme de l'eau. Prouvez-le-moi. Essayez. Je vous accompagne. Regardez l'heure. D'abord les mains. Auriez-vous peur? Non, mais cette glace est une glace. Et j'y vois un homme malheureux. Il ne s'agit pas de comprendre. Il s'agit de croire. vie est longue à être morte. C'est la zone. Elle est faite des souvenirs des hommes et des ruines de leurs habitudes. Et tous les miroirs du monde peuvent conduire à cette zone. Je le suppose. Mais je ne voudrais pas me donner des gants. Ne croyez pas que j'en sache beaucoup plus long que vous. Marchez. Marchez. J'ai peine à vous suivre. On dirait que vous marchez immobile. Moi, c'est autre chose. Que font ces gens, Tyrol? Est-ce qu'ils vivent? Ils le croient. Rien n'est plus tenace que la déformation professionnelle. Nous allons loin. Les mots que vous employez n'ont pas de sens chez nous. Il ne fait pas de vent. Pourquoi avez-vous l'air d'avancer contre le vent? Pourquoi? Toujours pourquoi? Ne me posez plus de questions. Marchez. Faudra-t-il que je vous prenne par la main? Voyage. L'Orthebise conduit Orphée où il ne devait pas le conduire. Nous sommes loin de sa belle démarche immobile. Orphée et son guide se traînent, tour à tour empêchés et emportés par un grand souffle inexplicable.
So as you could see in that clip, he was using like the bombed out buildings from wartime in France, basically, as the kind of, yes, that liminal space between the underworld and the world of the living. And the idea of the mirror as the aperture through which that space was entered. What did you think of that, Matthew?
Yeah, I loved the transportation. It gives you a real sense of transportation, which I guess what great Greek mythologies do is they give you a sense of transportation. But very impressed by that glove shot as well, of how they got the rubber gloves to zoom themselves onto his hands.
Yeah, and there's lots of like just really nice little tricks, visual ideas. But also, yeah, I love how it evokes both. Yeah, it's both a kind of an updating of the Greek story, but also being made at the time that it was. It's kind of got a wonderful kind of evocation of, yeah, Paris in 1950 or maybe just outside of Paris, the kind of the lives of the poets, and there's kind of a sense of like slight unrest and kind of young men trying to prove themselves and like bubbling passions. And on the other side, I think Eurydice is the weakest element, really. Unfortunately, she's not particularly well written, or she looks lovely, but she doesn't have much, I don't know, agency or kind of or fire to her, you know. Whereas the rest of the characters have got that, all of that. And yes, the death character especially, or she's then shown to be just one agent in a world of different agents serving the powers of death. She is great and very interesting, and her relationship with Orpheus is very compelling.
I really enjoyed the sense of, I guess, imaginative transcendence that's in there. And I was interested in seeing that landed in the post-war world, and that sense of creativity as the solution to or transcender of kind of gritty realism. And I wonder if that's a bit of a theme that runs through Greek mythological stories, that there's that sense of there's the humdrum and then there's the magical and the mysterious, and all of these stories are somehow about transcending that, either in a wonderful, sometimes in a really awful way, but there is that kind of transcendent feeling to it. I also, to our previous discussion, I enjoyed, from what I've seen of this, the capturing the essence and the idea of the Orpheus character and the myth without feeling the need to follow the story, because I guess in the mythological stories, often the characters don't have a huge amount of agency. I mean, it's a little bit different in some of the tragedy adaptations that we've talked about today, but there seems to be much more an Orpheus who has some kind of relationship with his talent. Oh, that takes me back to our sports movie conversation. Is this a sports movie, Phil?
Maybe it is.
Maybe this is a sports movie.
Yeah.
But I guess normally in stories of Orpheus from the classical world, he's just gifted with this preposterous skill, and it comes to him totally naturally. But the idea of an Orpheus that could gain or lose his talent and that needs to make decisions about the source of his inspiration, that's quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. There's I mean, a part of this film, there's a young poet who's up and coming and who kind of Orpheus might be a little bit envious of, this kind of mercurial talent, who's also like a wastrel and a scoundrel, and he's always getting drunk and getting into fights. And he dies early on in the film, and he sees the body being collected by death. And that's kind of what starts him off on this journey and his kind of own relationship with death then. But then throughout the film, this dead poet is broadcasting lines of his poetry from the underworld, like through a radio that he can pick up in the car radio at his place. And he starts basically copying down these phrases and trying to pass them off as his own. So it's got a whole
wow. That's a lot of cool ideas. I'm looking forward to watching this movie. Love it.
Awesome.
Very good. Do we want to place it, or should we do the final choice and then do all our placing in one go?
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it. I'm very curious to hear what you're going to choose.
Okay, so I have definitely stretched the edges of the category here, but what brought me to this film really was a single image, and it is an image that is absolutely and completely an image from Greek mythology, explicitly so, and it is the central image of the film. I'm super confident that this is a wonderful film. I think its relationship with Greek mythology might turn out to be a bit tentative, but we will see how you receive it. So the movie that I've chosen as my final movie is 1985's Brazil by Terry Gilliam.
Okay.
For those who haven't seen it, it is a dystopian fantasy. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Described by Terry Gilliam at one point as 1984 and a half, which was his description of a version of the 1984 story, which is much more dreamlike and imaginative. But the heart of this story is that a character called Sam Lowry, played amazingly by Jonathan Pryce, is living a very humdrum life in the heart of a dystopian bureaucracy where everything is a bit miserable, very grey, nothing works properly. The world is full of broken pipes and smoke, and it's a world in which mystery has been eradicated in the search for efficiency and conformity. Sam is a much more optimistic figure than Winston Smith from 1984, and he is constantly taken over by dreams where he visualizes a much more beautiful and inspired version of himself, soaring Icarus-like on wings towards the sky, wreathed in a kind of supernatural armor and inspired by his love to soar towards the sky and away from the humdrum earthliness that's below him. So the whole of the idea really is, this is a movie about people searching for beauty, for the divine, soaring upwards towards the heat of that beauty and that love, and then, like Icarus, inevitably being doomed as a result, being pulled towards that beauty. And obviously the nature of that beauty is that it's going to be too much, and that the earthly world is going to pull you back down and you're going to crash and be destroyed. But being the movie of a fabulous dreamer obsessed by the power of imagination, he presents the Icarus fable pretty much intact as it is, it doesn't have an easy, happy ending. But that search for the divine is presented as a glorious practice in and of itself. And it's very strange. It's a bleak and gritty and pessimistic movie that absolutely surfs on a wave of elevated imagination and aspiration. So it is not a retelling of a Greek mythology story, but the idea of Icarus is at the heart of the movie. And that is why I have smuggled it into this particular category for consideration and judgment by my skeptical partner. Would you like to be reminded of the Icarus element of this film in case?
I mean, it's burned into my brain, but I'll see it again for sure.
Has anybody seen Lowry? Has anybody seen Sam Lowry?
So that's one of my favorite images, definitely ever committed to cinema, that is inspired by and embodies Greek mythology. But Phil, can I get away with this as a top 10 Greek mythology movie?
My immediate response is I wonder how much care and time was taken into choosing the exact sound of the telephone that wakes him up. It was just something so just horrible and kind of pathetic, and yes, about that noise.
Well, absolutely. This whole film is just the counterpoising of the grim and the divine. You get a lot more of the grim than you do of the divine, but the little splashes of the divine are what really makes the movie.
I feel slightly bamboozled by your choice, Matthew. I agree that those sections are fabulous and have stayed with me. Definitely, I'm a big fan of this film as well. I'm a big fan of Terry Gilliam. Maybe we should do a deeper dive into this one at some point. It is so. I think, granted, it's a brilliant film, and it is, one of the best dystopian sci-fis ever. It's got one of the greatest endings ever, I think, like that really kind of honors the power of 1984's ending, but in a much more kind of cinematic way. It's fantastic. It's got some brilliant performances, as you've already noted. Jonathan Pryce and Robert De Niro is fantastic in a small role. Okay, so I accept all of that. As an adaptation of Greek mythology. So yeah, so he's flying, he dreams of flying too close to the sun. Does he not, in one of the, as the dream sequence goes on, does he not fight some kind of demon?
Yes, he does. There's some. This is where my case is going to break down. There's some kind of Arthurian elements to this. He increasingly shows up as more of an Arthurian knight, and yes, he fights a kind of a classic weird Gilliam kind of hybrid monster
Yeah.
devil
In my
kind of
memory,
character.
in my memory, it looks quite samurai-like.
Yes,
Uh,
he's got a funny shaped helmet. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Which I suppose would be if you're pinning this on because there's lots of other examples of mythological figures of humans combined with birds, such as angels, of course. But I suppose it does ring true in terms of he dares to hope for too much. He loses track of what is sensible or what is kind of, yeah, pragmatic, what is mundane, what is grounded. He dares to be a rebel, and that's ends in his destruction. So I guess that, yes, in that respect, the analogy holds true.
It holds true. And I guess also Gilliam being Gilliam, he refuses to accept the ending of the story in a sense and says, it doesn't matter if you're going to plunge into the sea and die. You've got to keep soaring up towards the sun anyway. It's from that period, that string of Gilliam movies, which really the message was be mad, aspire to the spiritual. Look, I think I would say the reason it landed with me is the same reason that I think kind of will bring it further down the leaderboard in our top 10. I think what it does brilliantly is it shows how there are enduring ideas and images that come from the world of Greek mythology, which can just inhabit all kinds of different ideas. And whilst it's quite hard to find examples of entire stories being brought intact with historical setting, with the mystery, with the symbolism being brought in intact, the symbols of Greek mythology inhabit things in really interesting ways. And this is my favorite example.
I suppose there's something to do with technology. Like, I think the Icarus story is one that I've thought about quite a bit. And the character that intrigues me more is his father, Daedalus, the inventor, because he then gets linked back to the to Minos and the Minotaur story. He kind of facilitated Minos's wife having sex with the bull.
Yes, which is why he got locked in the maze. Yeah, really, and really, that is the story. That is the story of Daedalus and Icarus. It's not really the story of Icarus, is it? It's the story of Daedalus, and it's like
Yeah.
it's the tragedy of a man imprisoned by his own talent and technical capability, and pays a variety of prices for it, including
Losing his son.
losing his son, and it broadly being his fault for having come up with a clever idea. So really,
Yeah.
that is the story. So yes, which is
But,
definitely not the story of Brazil.
but there's something about kind of, I feel like technology and the wings being a symbol of technology that does kind of run through Brazil. So much of the technology there is used because it's a real kind of indictment of bureaucracy more than anything else, isn't it? It's more about kind of a society that's just lost touch with meaning and has kind of put its populace into these endless cycles of bureaucratic nonsense. And so you see loads of technology, like the whole world is technology, isn't it? Like, but none of it really works. And it's all, and the reason, to go back to Bobby De Niro's character is the gorilla plumber who kind of is off grid fixing people's plumbing issues. Yeah, nothing really works. So I guess it is engaging in that same theme of technology and or whether technology exists to give us wings to aspire to the divine, or whether it's just pointless and endless and creating more misery for ourselves.
What a smart
Another,
interpretation, Phil. I wish I'd thought of it. That's of course what I meant to say in advocacy for my choice. So you're absolutely bang on. I think it's also rewatching. I didn't rewatch the whole movie, but rewatching bits of Brazil. You remember it's a much more prescient dystopia than a lot of others, because I think it's so much closer to the world that we're in and the world that we're moving in, where enthusiasm and love for technology is just encouraging us to accept a lot of random shit all around us all the time that doesn't really work properly, that doesn't really fulfill the promise of the technology, that's supposed to solve bureaucracy, but it creates it. Kind of tattered ends of the internet in which we spend lots of our time battering around with services that don't work properly or platforms that have deteriorated from their original purpose.
Well, shall we get to it then?
Yeah, let's do it. Right, give
Yeah.
us a recap, Phil. You have the list.
I
Hopefully,
do have the
you're up to
list.
date.
I am the man with the list. All righty. Got to find the list, of course. Okay. Yes, I am the man with the list. Here it is. So far we have number 8, Clash of the Titans. Number 7, The Storyteller. Number 6, Disney's Hercules. Number 5, Gospel at Kolonos. Then joint third, we have Trojan Women and Oedipo Re. At second, we have Jason and the Argonauts. And at first, we have Antigone.
Intriguing. Okay. Well, should we take Brazil since it's at the front of our minds?
Sure. Yeah.
And we have to balance the transcendent brilliance of Brazil as a piece of filmmaking. And on the other hand, its sketchy levels of association with the category that's currently under discussion.
Yeah. I can't put it below Hercules.
I was about to say, if you put it below Disney's Hercules, I think your podcast privileges are going to be retracted.
It's got to be either above Hercules or above Gospel at Kolonos.
I am comfortable with it coming below Gospel at Kolonos because I think that is such an amazing transformation of the myth, and it is unbelievably rooted in the ancients in a way that Brazil is probably technically not. So, should we pop it just above Disney's Hercules?
Okay.
We can asterisk it in the final visual to represent that its presence is slightly controversial.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Okay.
And then where should we going to put in old Offe?
Where is it versus Oedipo Re?
I put it above.
You put it above. So it's in this top cluster.
I mean, it's one of my favorite films, so I would even put it above Jason and the Argonauts.
Both I and our listeners and viewers are going to have to go away and do some homework because I'd imagine most people will not have seen our top choices, or indeed lots of the other choices, because this is a non-obvious category. But I am comfortable with that coming in at number 2, or indeed at number 1 if you prefer.
Well, it's very tricky because I think, obviously, I've seen Orphe many times over the years, whereas I've only seen Antigone once, and that was quite recently. Here's what I think. I think Antigone 2019 hit me emotionally. It felt very vital. It felt like it was upholding those great kind of tradition of so many of the Greek tragedies in terms of giving a voice to the oppressed. And I thought the adaptation was super smart, and especially liked that kind of the way that the chorus was just very kind of, very restrainedly represented by the social media elements that kind of made sense. It had a big emotional payoff, that idea. So I thought all of that was fantastic. Orphe is a much more kind of perhaps less emotional, but more kind of wistful, intellectual, imaginative, dreamlike film. As a piece of filmmaking, I think it's more important. It's more kind of immortal, more resonant. It's very stylish. So maybe it's a kind of a case of emotion versus style.
I think there's also an interesting split point here. And now I'm obviously going back and looking at the different ideas that we've thrown around during this conversation. There definitely is mythology as translated in quite an undiluted and unintermediated way into something that's modern filmmaking. And then there's mythology as processed through Greek tragedy. And I think probably these two things are things we're experiencing in quite different ways. One is really around magic, mystery, immemorial. They are themselves interpreting that mythology and finding ways to make it feel much more contemporary or much more related to the issues in people's lives. And I think maybe this is a branching that's happened way back down the line, more than 2,000 years ago. And these are the two ideas you have vying for top place here. You have the kind of the incorporation of the mystery and the divine in Orphe, and then you have the absolute direct relevance of the social ideas in Antigone. Because I definitely saw that in my choices. The difference between the Trojan women and Jason and the Argonauts. I mean, these couldn't be more different pieces of visual entertainment, but they followed different routes. One is taking timeless stories to talk about contemporary issues or contemporary struggles. The other is trying to inject the mystery of the ancient world directly into your brain. So which of those two things do you think should go on top for a top 10
I
Greek
think
mythology?
having thought about that and processed it with your help there, I think Orphe deserves to be number one. Number 10, we have Clash of the Titans. At number 9, we have Jim Henson's The Storyteller, Greek Myths. At number 8, we have Disney's Hercules. At number 7, Brazil. At number 6, Gospel at Kolonos. Joint fourth, The Trojan Women and Oedipo Rey. Third, we have Jason and the Argonauts. Second, we have Antigone. And first, we have Jean Cocteau's Orphée.
That is a fantastically intriguing list.
It's our most eclectic yet, I think.
I think it's the most eclectic list of anything I've ever seen. If anyone has managed to listen through these 2 episodes and get to this point through this deep dive, I will personally buy several rounds of drinks for anyone who watches all of those films and would like to discuss the ordering of them. I can't imagine there's really anyone on earth who's watched all of them, but I look forward to being that person soon. I think we should both set ourselves the challenge.
Yes. No, please do, though. Send us a message or leave a comment. Let us know how messed up we are and how ridiculous our list is. Let us know the obvious ones that we've forgotten about. Yes, give us your thoughts on the topic of the greatest Greek myth-inspired movies.
Yes, fantastic list. Thank you very much. Any final reflections from you, Phil, before we close on what this has made you think about Greek mythology? Or
well, could we just return to what was your breakdown right at the start? Do you remember you said you'd
Yes, I talked about 3 elements. I talked about history, mystery, and symbolism were the 3 components, and I was questioning whether all 3 of those components can be successfully brought to the screen all together, or whether you're better off smashing and grabbing some of those components.
I think that's an interesting breakdown. I think that mystery is perhaps the key part of that trifecta, that space in between the kind of the register of symbols and the historical context, both the context of the Greeks, the context of when whichever film was made, and the context of us as viewers now. That fluid in between space where where interpretation lies and reinterpretation. Yes, I think that is probably what has kind of continues to excite me about not just films but all adaptations of Greek myths, is being surprised by where the interpretation goes and what new ideas and new imagery arises as a result of that.
I think you're right, and I think that's what makes it so invaluable as a source of ideas and inspiration. Anyway, this has been a fantastic exploration. Thank you for suggesting it, Phil. It's been an amazing journey.
Thanks for coming with me, Matthew.
Yeah, loads of stuff that I still need to go and watch, including, unusually on this occasion, our top 2 choices in our top 10. So I'm going to have to go and resolve that shortly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will be back with you soon to once more explore the infinite screen.
Nice one. Subscribe, all of that jazz. Send us any ideas for future episodes. Thanks again, Matthew. See you soon.